Britain is in the grip of a cannabis growing epidemic. Incredibly, criminals in the UK are now growing so much skunk, a super strong strain of cannabis, that we are smuggling it out of Britain and exporting it to the rest of Europe. And this is where it's being cultivated, in the kitchen, sitting rooms and bedrooms of suburban homes up and down the country. The criminals behind this crime explosion are almost exclusively Vietnamese gangs. How did they get here, and why are they targeting the UK? I'm on a journey crisscrossing the whole country, from Aberdeen to Southampton, London to Liverpool, and I want to understand the violent gangs, the high-tech fraudsters, and the sophisticated criminal gangs that now make up Britain's new underworld. Tonight, I'm uncovering the drugs factories operating under our very noses. I'll be discovering how Vietnamese gangs have taken over the lucrative UK cannabis market and are making millions of pounds by turning semi-detached houses in the suburbs into super strong skunk farms. I'll be with the police as they try to crack down on their operations, and I'll speak to an insider who explains why these Vietnamese gangs are spreading their criminal web across the country. It looks like an ordinary home, but the occupants of this house outside Reading are about to get a nasty surprise.
Today we're going to execute 2 warrants. We believe that that address is being used as a cannabis factory.
If you're out there, come to the hatch and show me your hands! Please! Here we are! Show me your hands!
Anything you say may be given in evidence.
Behind the net curtains of this very normal suburban house, the police found one Vietnamese criminal and in every room a forest of cannabis plants worth tens of thousands of pounds. This year, the Thames Valley Police have been raiding cannabis farms just like this one at the rate of over 1 a week. And incredibly, they have discovered that every single one was being run by organised Vietnamese crime gangs, gangs who are seriously skilled at what they do.
The stuff that the students grow in their own cupboard is usually they've got a couple of hemp seeds from one of the local shops and they've grown it and watered it, and it takes months. Whereas these, you know, they'll go from a seed to up to 1 metre high within 3 or 4 months.
Each room in the house has different sized plants, ensuring a constant supply of this dangerous and powerful drug.
You'll have your nursery, and then they have at different stages of growth, so that they can, if they want to, harvest a room. That goes out, that the people come and pick it up, and then straight away they'll have all the babies set out again, and it starts again.
This basically is all the baby plants, so they'll take cuttings, put it in plugs, and they are basically, if you take the lid off that, and these are freshly done, they'll be dipped in growth hormone and then stuck in these little pots to grow.
THC is the compound that gets cannabis users high. Halls like this have THC levels of up to 20%, nearly 7 times higher than that of imported cannabis, which used to be the main form of the drug on the streets. A recent medical report says that because of the potency of the drug, people who use it are 40% more likely to suffer from schizophrenia, and it's why the government are now considering upgrading cannabis from a Category C to a Category B illegal substance. The man responsible for cultivating this potent drug is known in gang circles as the gardener. In this suburban house, the gardener was growing and every 3 months harvesting an illegal crop worth £50,000. But not even the neighbours knew what he was doing.
He said hello, he was quite polite. We only see him like a handful of times, we didn't see him. He was quite a nice bloke, you know? It is a shock.
I never smelt anything.
Yeah.
No. Now you're moving it. The smell is amazing next door. Now you're moving it about, but I never smelt anything from in there. Goes to show you, doesn't it? You never know.
In the hierarchy of the drugs gang, the gardener is right at the bottom. He's been put in this house to cultivate the cannabis crop day and night. Like most gardeners, this man is Vietnamese and speaks very little English.
There's a strong chance by the end of today he'll be charged with probably a couple of offences. One of production of controlled drug-grade cannabis and also possession with intent to supply.
It's incredible to think that that house behind me, a family home on a main street, has been operating as a drugs factory, producing a very powerful strain of cannabis. Now, you may be as stunned as I was to learn that we spend every year £4 billion on cannabis in this country. In fact, the market for cannabis is larger than the market for heroin, cocaine and crack combined. There are over 30,000 Vietnamese people living in the UK. Although there are no exact figures, thousands of them are believed to be here illegally. Many have been trafficked into the UK by Vietnamese cannabis gang bosses to work in drug factories. I tracked down a Vietnamese woman who works with law enforcement worldwide. She knows how these cannabis gangs operate, but is so fearful of them that she would only speak to me if we hid her identity.
There are some very violent, very dangerous. I've already heard of some fight, some murder cases. That is very scary to the Vietnamese community here.
She told me how the gangs recruit the gardeners from Vietnam.
They were told that they can find good jobs here, which is they can earn many £100 per week, and perhaps after 6 months or 1 year working here, they can pay for the cost of traveling to the UK, and they either sell their land, their house, or the lands and house are in the hand of the organizers. Until these people have paid the money back.
So they are effectively, trafficked into this country, sometimes under false pretenses, and they find themselves working in these cannabis farms in order to just to pay off the debt of being trafficked.
Yes, yes.
I've discovered that the gardeners are usually smuggled into this country by the gang bosses in lorries from the continent or are encouraged to make false asylum applications. Thames Valley Police have arrested dozens of them in the past year.
They may have come to the country out of choice, seeking work, seeking a better life, better money. Most of them don't speak a word of English, they have no idea where they are, so they just do as they're told.
These gardeners are paid a pittance, if at all. It's effectively slave labour.
We've all heard about the girls who were brought in from Eastern Europe and forced into prostitution. Well, these people are brought in from Vietnam and forced into being part of mass production of controlled drugs.
By keeping labour costs to a minimum, the Vietnamese gangs have managed to take over control of the UK cannabis market. Other crime gangs simply can't compete. Dave Turton showed me some other properties used by the drug gangs, like this semi-detached house in a smart suburb of Reading.
In this one, between 200 and 300 quite healthy cannabis plants in various states of growth, from the baby ones to the full mature adult ones, which were up to about 1 metre tall. They could yield a crop 3 times a year. You're talking over 50 kilos of cannabis that could have been produced from this house alone every year, with a street value anywhere up to £250,000.
He took us to another property in another upmarket part of town that was also taken over by a Vietnamese gang.
These gangs have the contacts and the ability to bring people in from across the other side of the world, sneaking them into the country illegal. It's linked to people trafficking. It is organised crime without any shadow of a doubt.
Due to its domination of the UK cannabis market and its links to people trafficking, Vietnamese organised crime is now ranked by the Metropolitan Police as the 4th highest threat posed by overseas criminals in London. Back at the raided house, it's clear that the gangs will go to extraordinary lengths to get the most out of their cannabis harvest.
As you can see, he's got like a pump system. This is actually one of the most advanced ones I've seen.
They even rewire the house so they can tap the enormous amount of electricity they need from the national grid for free.
At the end of the day, when you're earning the kind of money that this place will generate, you need to know what you're doing. There's the insulation system, which is taking smell and everything out, but they've cut a great big hole in the roof, so the damage to actually the properties is huge. This isn't a 5-minute job, is it, really, putting it in?
No.
And not only this, I think looking at stuff like this, if you're a landlord, go and check your property.
The gangs sell the skunk in bulk to traditional UK dealers who distribute it to the estimated 3 million users in this country.
Initially, in the early days, it probably wasn't treated as seriously as it should be, but as the problem's grown and grown, people are starting to sit up and realise, actually, this is quite a big operation. Lots of people making lots of money, supplying the illegal drug world in this country.
That is unbelievable. Just amazing that people do that sort of thing around here, isn't it? Never would have thought it.
In total, the police seized 381 mature plants in this house. The drug gang rented the house behind me for £275 a week. They put cannabis in each room, which they sold for up to £12 a gram. And they stood to make up to £200,000 profit a year. This year, the Met have already raided more than 250 skunk factories across Greater London. That's £50 million worth of drugs that were being grown in the capital alone. And as the Vietnamese gangs face increasing pressure from the law, they're having to move further afield.
Other forces around Thames Valley have put a lot of effort into getting rid of the cannabis factories and put a lot of pressure on actually finding them. That's driven them out of places like Surrey and Hampshire. They've been pushed out of other counties and obviously concentrating their efforts in here until we make a hard push. Then they'll be on to other places. They'll be up north.
In part 2, I'll be finding out how these property-savvy gangs are maximising their profits by moving up north. And I'll be finding out more about the ruthless Vietnamese gang bosses at the top of the cannabis farm network. I'm on the trail of a new type of criminal network, Vietnamese cannabis gangs, who fuel a market worth £4 billion a year by turning suburban houses into cannabis factories. This year, police have raided more than 250 cannabis factories across London, but for every one the police shut down, another springs up. And now the criminals are pushing north to try to turn an even bigger profit from their crime. DI Dave Murphy and DC Shani Nair are officers with Cambridge Police. They're struggling to keep up with this new phenomenon. Vietnamese gangs are now even buying properties like this one-bedroom council flat in central Peterborough and converting them into cannabis farms.
I think it's fair to say I had no idea it was going to be organised crime run by Vietnamese nationals. You think of Peterborough as a, provincial city, not a big, like London or Manchester, but it just goes to show that it can be anywhere really in the country.
D.I. Murphy was keen to stress the dangers of this super strong variety of cannabis known as skunk.
It can lead to significant mental health issues, schizophrenia, which really has a profound impact on communities.
They showed me a second property nearby that a Vietnamese gang had rented. It's a detached house in a smart suburb, and the neighbours were shocked to learn that it had been turned into a drugs factory.
They could not believe that they had this huge cannabis factory next door to them or opposite them. But then with the benefit of hindsight, they were saying things like, oh yeah, I remember a Ford Transit and loading black bin bags into the back to take it away to, its intended destination, be it London or somewhere else in the country.
In order to make the most money, the gang had stuffed plants into every room in the house, including all the 5 bedrooms. There was so little room left that the police found the gardener had been forced to sleep by the front door.
As you go in the front door, there's a hallway, and that's where he was sleeping, in the hallway.
Although from the outside it looks like a really affluent, nice house, he wasn't really living in nice conditions inside. It was all about making money from plants.
Our Vietnamese insider, who works with law enforcement worldwide and wanted to remain anonymous, told me more about the horrific lives of the exploited gardeners.
They even not allowed to go out. They are provided with food once or twice a week.
Forced labour, really?
Yes, they stayed in the house most of the time. They're saying, don't go out because you are illegal. If you go out, you will be arrested. That is the tool the criminals are using.
So they use the fact that they've been trafficked here illegally as a weapon against
Yes.
Once the gardener is installed, the gang bosses often return to Vietnam and run the operation from back there.
Some people even only visit the UK as visitors and put the money, go back to Vietnam, and from Vietnam still running their factories here.
In the UK?
In the UK by using mobile phones.
So you're describing to me something that sounds quite a lot like a network that stretches, you know, all the way back to Vietnam. This isn't just a gang based here in the UK.
Yes, it is a network.
With the gang bosses very rarely in the UK, it's been hard for British police to catch the people at the top of these crime networks. But they have been successful at finding the actual farms. So successful that I've discovered that the gangs are moving their cannabis factories away from our towns and cities and into more remote areas. I've travelled to Norfolk. Even here in rural England, police are fighting a war against the unwelcome visitors who have brought cannabis crime to their doorstep. Police are following up on a number of leads that suggest isolated farm buildings are being turned into cannabis factories.
Follow, mate.
As the police enter the property, a man inside makes a run for it.
Your legs out. Get down behind your back.
Once again, it's a Vietnamese man who has been caught red-handed. The gang rented this spacious farmhouse for just £1,000 per month and filled it up with skunk plants.
Yeah, the premises inside, as we know now, is secure. There's no further people inside, but obviously there's things of interest for us.
This is like the 12, 13 week crop finale in here, in this room.
It's in excess of 500, 600 plants, which is not too bad. We have had ones where every single room in the house, the loft, has been used for growing. They're obviously a little bit more sophisticated here. They want a little bit of living space themselves.
And once again, the gang bosses are nowhere to be seen.
Clearly there are money men behind these operations that by way of their operation, they've removed themselves 2, 3 or 4 times. So all we ever get left with, and essentially all whoever gets uncovered, is the likes of this gentleman today.
In the past year, over 1,100 cannabis farms like this have been raided by police across the UK. That's a staggering 20 every week.
This was, up until a few years ago, a fairly remarkable occurrence, certainly in this county, and probably throughout the rest of England. Unfortunately, now it is more of a regular occurrence, and that in itself gives an example of how the networks of these people have spread and how prolific they are, essentially.
Because of their use of slave labour and Norfolk's low property prices, this gang was said to make hundreds of thousands of pounds from their operation here. In King's Lynn and surrounding parts of Norfolk, a 3-bed semi costs around £170,000 to buy, or around £160 a week to rent. But imagine if the drug gangs were able to cultivate their crops in a place where property prices are amongst the lowest in the country. This is County Durham in the north of England. It's a county of struggling old mining towns where properties are among the lowest in Britain. And even here, in the far north of England, police have raided properties which have been converted into skunk cannabis factories.
First time I've been into what you could class as a factory, the whole house being turned over, and it was very humid, as you would expect, very warm. The smell was overpowering because obviously they were growing skunk cannabis, which gets its name because of its pungent odour. The fans were still working, the lights were on in some rooms. Because they bypassed the electricity meter, we couldn't turn anything off. We had to call the electricity board to come and make sure everything was safe. I mean, there was a real danger of one of these houses catching fire.
This modest terrace house was one property uncovered by police.
On entering, the officers found that a false door had been constructed just inside, which was obviously designed to stop people noticing what was going on inside the house. All the rooms in here, apart from the front bedroom, had been turned into grow areas. Over 300 plants were found in this address at varying states of maturity.
Once again, the neighbours had no idea what was going on.
We don't know who's coming into the village. You know, there's a lot of strangers now in the village. We don't really know who's who.
No. Some people obviously think it's a lovely smell, other people can't abide it, but it does get on your clothes. So you can actually go home stinking of cannabis. Get some very funny looks in the local pub.
Several properties like this have been raided in the past few months, and the police store shows just how organised the gangs have become.
This is half of the growing equipment that was seized from all of the premises we searched. Pedestal fans, which were obviously used for circulating the air in the premises. These commercial nutrients. Some of these can be £200 for a tub. The fuse boxes, that's a 600 watt halogen bulb, so you can imagine the heat that gives off. In a lot of cannabis cultivations, they use chains on the lights, and this is so you can vary the height of the light as the plant grows. So obviously as the plant gets bigger, you have to move the light up. All the lights in every one of the houses is tied in identical fashion with this green wire, again suggesting the same people are responsible for hanging all the lights in each of the houses in the same fashion.
Equipment like this can be bought easily at gardeners' shops or online, and that presents the police with another headache.
We can't actually sell any of this stuff, because you take 17 grand, or auction it all, great, and the money can go into the public coffers, and we'll get something out of it. But if you auction this lot, I'll tell you exactly what it'll be used for. It's growing cannabis, and so it's all got to be destroyed.
In my journey through suburban England, I've discovered just how easily Vietnamese cannabis gangs convert anonymous houses into money-making drug factories. Part of me feels sorry for the exploited low-level gardeners who are seen by the mysterious gang bosses as totally expendable. And that's why the police face a never-ending battle, because with so much money at stake, once police break one operation, new cannabis gangs move in, take root and flourish somewhere else.
Click back there.
Next time on Crime Invasion, the return of a gang that once changed the criminal face of Britain.
These are some of the swords that were seized. There was a firearm involved in the job.
I didn't care if I died. I didn't care about life.